Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back into a world that smells like damp straw, boiled onions, and absolutely no deodorant. You're poor in medieval Europe now. Sorry, that's just how it is. And your new bed is a lumpy sack of straw crawling with critters you can't name. The thatched roof above your head leaks during every rain, which, judging by the smell, was very recently. A rooster is screaming somewhere nearby, and a goat just knocked over your bucket of drinking water. You're waking up in a hovel, mud walls, no chimney, floor made of packed earth, and only one small hole for light. You're not alone, of course. Your entire family sleeps in this one-room home, along with some of the animals who, let's be honest, are the only ones warm enough to sleep well. The mattress is barely a concept. It's old straw, flattened by years of use, itchy and probably damp. You feel the sharp pinch of a flea bite behind your ear and try to remember whether that bite you found on your leg yesterday was moving. Lice are a fact of life, so are mice. And the bed bugs? Let's not even start. As you stretch and try to rub the stiffness out of your back, good luck, that stiffness is permanent. You look around. Your mother's already up, coaxing a smoky fire into existence with damp twigs. The smoke has nowhere to go. There's no chimney, so it fills the room like a pungent fog. You inhale that campfire flavor, with hints of sheep, onion, and possibly urine. You notice your brother is still asleep under the same itchy blanket you share. You consider kicking him awake, but you don't have the energy. And you're not totally sure he's not dead. You give him a nudge. He groans. Still alive. Good. Your clothes are the same ones you wore yesterday, and the day before, and the week before that. They are wool, because that's what you've got. They itch like sandpaper and smell like every emotion you've had this month. The color was once a brownish beige, but has now settled into something best described as dirt. Outside, you hear your neighbor's voice raised in a groggy chant. He's cursing the rats again. His roof collapsed in last night's storm. Historians still argue whether peasants actually felt home ownership pride. But judging by the yelling, he's not thrilled. You slip on your foot wraps, strips of old cloth tied around your bare feet in place of shoes. Most people go barefoot, but hey, your feet were cold yesterday. They will be again. The dirt floor, damp and sticky, sucks at your soles as you stumble to the door. You push it open and are hit with a gust of crisp morning air, and also manure. Lots of manure. It's not just yours. You share a narrow lane with 10 other families and just as many cows. Welcome to your day. You are awake. You are hungry. You are definitely itchy. And you are most certainly still poor. Now, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're watching from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step outside and squint at the grayish sky. Is it morning? Could be. You measure time by the sun and church bells, and neither are cooperating yet. You yawn and begin the ritual of scraping last night's grime from your fingernails. It's a lost cause. You give up quickly. You spot a neighbor hunched over, picking lice out of her daughter's hair. Her child swats at her absently, more annoyed than anything. Lice are part of the furniture now. Once, a man tried to get rid of them by boiling his clothes. He burned down half the village. Quirky fact, some folks believed that sleeping with garlic around your neck would ward off both lice and evil spirits. All it really did was make you unpopular. As you walk past the pigsty, Yes, right next to your door, you hear a sneeze. You freeze. Sneezing in public is a big deal. Some say it's the devil trying to escape your body. Others say it means you'll get the plague. Either way, you back up a little. Your stomach rumbles. You try not to think about food yet. Breakfast is a few hours away, if it comes at all. Instead, you begin your daily list of worries. Will the roof leak again? Will the Lord raise taxes? Will that mole on your arm start talking like the last one in your dream? Scholars still debate whether peasants in medieval times genuinely felt hopeful at sunrise or just resigned to survival. Judging by your outlook, we're going with resigned. Still, the dawn light looks soft on the hills, and the mist makes the nearby trees seem almost magical. You pause to appreciate it. Then a chicken runs across your foot, dragging half a turnip. You wonder if you'll get a bite of that later. And so begins your day. Not glamorous, not clean, but yours. You shuffle back inside, and the smoky warmth clings to your damp wool tunic like a desperate hug. Your mother hands you a chunk of black bread. It's from 3 days ago, and the crust could double as armor. You bite into it carefully, trying to find a corner that won't slice your gums. Spoiler, there is no such corner. This is breakfast, if you're lucky. The bread is made from rye or barley, the cheapest grains, and baked with more sawdust than flour, it seems. There are rumors of white bread, soft, fluffy, and reserved for the church or nobility. You've never seen it. It might as well be unicorn food. You wash it down with a sip of ale. Yes, ale. Not because it's fun, it isn't, but because the water isn't safe. Most peasants drink what's called small ale, weak, barely alcoholic, and brewed just enough to kill off the worst of the waterborne bacteria. You take a cautious gulp, nose wrinkling at the taste. It's warm, flat, and smells like wet hay, but it's better than dysentery. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were chronically undernourished or just moderately malnourished. Either way, your stomach grumbles its verdict. You don't eat to feel full. You eat to survive the next round of digging. Your little sister has managed to snag a precious luxury, half an onion. She's holding it like it's a family heirloom, taking tiny bites and humming. You think about bartering your bread crust for one sliver, but the look in her eye says she's ready to bite fingers if challenged. On rare occasions, you might start the day with pottage, a porridgey stew made from whatever's around. Turnips, beans, weeds, and if you're blessed, a strip of bacon. But that's usually reserved for high days or when someone's pig mysteriously dies in the night. No one asks questions about those pigs. Today, no pottage. Just cold bread, a splash of ale, and the distinct feeling your teeth will fall out by 30. You gnaw like a rat, chew slowly, and pretend you're enjoying it. You aren't. Across the room, your uncle mumbles a prayer. He once fasted for 3 days, just to bribe a priest into blessing his goat. The goat died anyway, but hey, it died wholly. You think about how meals mark time. No clocks, no to-do lists, just the hope of bread in the morning, turnip soup at midday, and some warm ale before sleep. If a meal doesn't happen, the day just blurs. Your neighbor trudges by the window carrying a basket of spoiled cabbage. She offers a wave with a cabbage leaf and brags that she found something crunchy. You nod, unsure if that's cause for celebration or alarm. Sometimes, bread is baked with surprise ingredients: dirt, sand, the occasional pebble. Quirky fact: some medieval millers were infamous for skimping on quality grain and padding the flour with ground-up bones or animal waste. One was said to use dried mouse. Probably a rumor, but no one's quite sure. You take another bite. Is that Grit? You crunch thoughtfully. Yup, grit. The smell of the fire shifts. It's not wood anymore. It's dried dung. Fuel is fuel. You stir the embers, trying to forget that you once stepped barefoot on one of those dried cakes. The memory haunts you. You remember a story an old woman told once, that if you toast bread while chanting the name of a saint, the crumbs would ward off rats. You tried it last year. The rats were unimpressed. Breakfast conversation, such as it is, revolves around who's seen the Lord's tax collector. Your cousin claims he saw him sneezing, and now everyone's hoping he's too ill to make his rounds. That, or that someone accidentally locked him in the latrine again. You nibble the last bit of bread, brushing away a suspicious blue-green fuzz. It might have been mold, or it might have been a spice. No way to know. You decide to believe it was fancy. Scholars still debate whether medieval villagers had any real variety in diet. You personally know 7 ways to eat a turnip, and none of them are exciting. You look around the smoky room, watching your family chew in silence, the babies teething on a spoon, the dogs chewing on your father's boot. The goat is chewing on the table. Everything is chewed, and nothing is clean. You head outside for air, blinking at the gray sky again. Clouds are gathering. Rain means no field work, which means no dinner. You squint at a bird overhead and wonder if anyone would notice if it fell into your lap. Once, a stranger came to the village and claimed he'd eaten roast duck. Nobody believed him, so they dunked him in the river for lying. He left shortly after that, wet and probably hungry. Your mouth still tastes like stale bread, and the ale burp didn't help. But the day's beginning, and your stomach is only mildly insulted. That's good enough. You tie up your foot wraps, scratch behind your ear where something just moved, and think. Time to go be productive, or at least time to go pretend you're not starving. You trudge down the muddy lane, dodging puddles and goat droppings with the precision of someone who's done this dance 1,000 times. Your foot wraps are already soaked. One of them slips loose, and now you're flapping along like a soggy duck. You re-wrap it without bending over. Your back isn't ready to negotiate with gravity this early. Your destination is the Lord's field, of course. It always is. Every day that isn't a saint's feast or a funeral, yours or someone else's, is a work day. And while it may be your hands blistering on the hoe, your back hunched under the plow, none of it actually belongs to you. The land, the crops, even your tools are property of the manor. You are simply the warm, breathing accessory. The road is lined with tired hedgerows, occasional rocks, and more mud than solid ground. It hasn't rained in 2 days, but the path remembers every storm. The smell is a pungent mix of compost, wet wool, and resignation. You blend right in. Ahead of you, 2 older boys are laughing. One of them is carrying a dead rabbit. You watch with equal parts jealousy and suspicion. Did they trap it, or was it found already stiff? Either way, rabbit stew is in their future. You sigh and kick a clump of dirt. It squelches against your shin like an insult. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers really walked 10 miles a day on average. You don't track mileage. You track foot pain, and by that count, you're already at limp. The walk takes you past the manor's outer walls, looming stone that feels more like a fortress than a home. You've only been inside once to deliver eggs. The tiled floor was so smooth you nearly fell just looking at it. And the smell. Lavender, candles, roasted meats. It haunts you in dreams. You inhale now and catch only smoke and manure. A neighbor waves from the side of the lane. He's fixing a broken yoke with twine and sheer will. You nod. He nods. You both know what's ahead. Hours of bending, sweating, and hoping the steward doesn't notice you leaning on your spade. There's a quick rustle in the hedges. You freeze, momentarily hopeful for a wild berry or nut. Instead, a squirrel darts out, stares at you like it knows your secrets, and vanishes again. You wish it luck. It probably eats better than you. You pass a stone shrine on the road, a weather-worn saint with a face long since rubbed blank. Someone's tied a bundle of dried flowers to its base. You pause, murmur a half-formed prayer, and keep walking. Maybe the saint's in a good mood today. Maybe he likes the smell of sweaty peasants. Your hands are already stiff, and you haven't even picked up your hoe yet. The morning mist clings to your tunic, seeping into your skin like a damp hug. You're not cold exactly, just wet in that uncomfortable full-body sneeze kind of way. Quirky fact: some villagers believed you could cure aching joints by burying an eel skin under your doorstep. You tried it once. All it did was confuse the dog and attract ants. You reach the edge of the fields and take a deep breath. The expanse is wide, dull green, and mostly weeds, but it's yours to till. Well, not yours in any legal sense, but the Lord has generously allowed you to break your back on it for free. In return, you get to keep part of the turnip harvest if the crows don't beat you to it. You join the line of bent figures already at work. Some dig, some sow, some just stand and pretend to inspect the soil like it's a rare artifact. You pick up your hoe and get to it. The rhythm sets in. Lift, drop, scrape, repeat. A gentle, never-ending thud. A boy next to you hums a broken tune. You hum along, off-key, then trail off. Talking is discouraged unless it's about the Lord's wheat or the weather. You think about starting a conversation on how clouds look like bread loaves, but decide against it. The steward strolls by on a horse, eyeing everyone like a hawk who charges rent. He pauses near you, sniffs, and moves on. You resist the urge to bow too low. Your back would protest violently. You scrape through soil, unearthing a beetle the size of your thumb. You flick it away and dig deeper. Sometimes you find pottery shards. Once, someone found an old Roman coin and was accused of witchcraft. He left shortly after, probably to go be suspicious elsewhere. You work and work and work. The sun rises a little, the dew dries, and the flies wake up. They arrive like uninvited guests at a feast, swarming every sweaty neck and exposed ear. You swat them lazily. They always return. Lunch is hours away. Rest is even further. But you find a sort of rhythm in the toil. The mind empties. The body moves. Your thoughts drift. What would it be like to never walk to this field again? You wonder. To be free. To sleep in. To eat bread without checking for mold first. You chuckle softly. Then the hoe hits a rock, jars your wrist, and pulls you back into reality. You look up, wipe your brow with your sleeve, and take in the endless field. It looks exactly like it did yesterday, and it'll look just the same tomorrow. You keep at it, hoe up, hoe down, until the sky loses its morning hue and shifts to that harsh white that means the sun is overhead and no one's happy about it. Your hands are raw, your back is on fire, your stomach is somewhere between hunger and nausea, like it can't decide which discomfort to commit to. The labor doesn't change. You dig, you sow, you weed. Sometimes you switch tasks, but the misery is consistent. The sun glares like a lord himself, hot and indifferent. The soil is dry and clumps like regret. You try to ignore your blisters. They've popped already. What's one more? Next to you, an older woman mutters as she works. She's talking to her hoe, which she's named Margaret. Margaret isn't pulling her weight today, apparently. No one thinks it's strange. After a few hours under the sun, you'll talk to anything too. Your tunic is soaked through with sweat. It sticks to your skin like secondhand shame. You want to scratch your neck, but your hands are caked with dirt. So you just twitch slightly and hope the sensation goes away. It doesn't. Quirky detail. Some peasants believed if a blackbird circled your head 3 times while you worked, it meant death was near. One circled your cousin last year. He panicked, ran into a tree, and broke his leg. He's still alive. The bird? Less so. It ended up in stew. The steward makes another pass on his horse. He doesn't work, of course. His job is to remind you that you're not working hard enough. He yells at a boy who paused to scratch his foot. The boy nods apologetically and digs faster, like his life depends on it. Sometimes it actually does. Historians still argue whether medieval overseers were truly cruel or just doing what the system required. You don't care either way. His boots don't have holes in them. That's all the proof you need. A nearby man groans and straightens up too fast. He wobbles and sits down hard. Heat stroke, or exhaustion, or both. No one moves to help. Not because you're heartless, just helpless. If you stop working, you risk punishment. Bread docked. Ale reduced. Time in the stocks if the steward's feeling theatrical. You steal a glance at the horizon. Clouds. Maybe a storm later. You hope it arrives fast enough to end the day, but slow enough to not destroy the barley. The soil is full of surprises. Broken pots, rusted nails, old bones. You once found a buckle and kept it as a lucky charm. It wasn't lucky. You tripped over a sow the next morning and broke your thumb. Still, you carry it. Tradition is funny like that. Your mouth is dry. You want water, but the communal jug is back near the shed and already swarming with flies. Plus, the water tastes like pond and possibly frog. You debate risking it. Instead, you chew on a blade of grass. It helps absolutely nothing, but makes you feel slightly rebellious. You adjust your foot wraps again. The mud's starting to seep between your toes. It's cold and squishy, which is weirdly pleasant if you ignore the occasional sharp rock. A breeze passes through. Everyone stops for a second. Just a second. Then it's back to the rhythm. Hoe, drop, scrape, repeat. The breeze is gone. You miss it immediately. You try to think of something other than work. You imagine the fair coming in a few weeks. There'll be roasted nuts, music, jugglers. You once saw a puppet show there. The puppets had better posture than you. You wonder if there'll be honey this year. Probably not. But maybe. Your arms are numb, your fingers blistered. Your lower back, you don't want to talk about it. You switch hands, hoping the blisters on your left palm are slightly less inflamed. They aren't. Quitting isn't an option. Not because someone will stop you. There's nowhere to quit to. You live here. You die here. And until then, you hoe. You look around at your fellow laborers. Everyone is bent, silent, mechanical. You wonder what they're thinking. Probably the same as you. When does this end? The truth? It doesn't. Not really. Sure, there's a midday break. Maybe. And eventually, the sun dips enough to send you home. But the work itself never ends. The weeds grow back, the crops rot, the seasons change, and the aching stays. You mutter a prayer. Not to any saint in particular, just to the sky. You promise to stop swearing if the sun hides behind clouds for one blessed hour. The sky does not respond. One of the lads nearby starts singing a nonsense song about turnips and marriage. It has exactly 4 notes. You join in out of sheer desperation. Everyone does. For a moment, you're not peasants. You're a chorus of mud-covered misfits yelling about vegetables. It helps. The steward yells at you to shut it. You do. But someone's still humming. Maybe Margaret the hoe. Eventually, your hands move on their own. The motion is built into your bones. The aches blur into a steady buzz. You stop checking the sky. You stop thinking. You just work. That's how you get through it. Not with strength. Not with hope. But with surrender. The sun is finally tipping just past its ruthless peak when you hear the low clang of the manor bell. Lunch. Or at least the idea of it. You let your hoe drop with a grateful sigh that's somewhere between relief and a quiet sob. Your shoulders scream. Your hands pulse. Your stomach growls with the force of an angry sermon. You limp toward the field's edge, not fast, not slow, just with the careful pacing of someone trying not to faint in front of the steward. You find a patch of shade under a half-dead tree where the roots poke through the dirt like accusing fingers, and you sit down, knees cracking like old doors. Lunch is whatever you've managed to bring, borrow, or not lose to rats. Today, you unwrap a thin scrap of cloth to reveal the bounty. 2 turnip peels, a chunk of barley bread, and a questionable-looking strip of something leathery. Meat? Possibly. Bark? Also possibly. You bite the bread first. It's hard as a shingle and tastes like disappointment. You chew slowly, trying to make it last and not dislodge a molar. One tooth already wobbles more than it should. Dental care in your world means maybe chewing parsley or praying. Quirky fact. Some villagers believed if you rubbed goose fat on your jaw, it would keep your teeth from falling out. Others swore by tying a frog to your face overnight. You've never tried either. Yet. Next up, the turnip peels. They're dry and slightly shriveled, but at least they don't bite back. You pop them in like crisps, though they taste more like sadness than salt. Still, there's crunch. Crunch is rare. You savor it. The leathery strip. Definitely bark. Or maybe smoked root. You gnaw on it anyway, trying to pretend it's jerky. Your stomach isn't fooled. It grumbles, offended. A nearby boy brags that his mother boiled a bone for 3 hours to make meat broth. His friend responds that he saw a pigeon once. You all nod solemnly. The pigeon sighting is the closest any of you have been to luxury this month. The steward eats apart from you, of course. On a raised platform in view of the workers, he sips actual soup, thick with barley and something that might be real chicken. You avert your eyes. No point dreaming too big. That way lies heartbreak. You share your crust with a girl who helped you weed last week. In return, she offers 3 peas she kept hidden in a pouch. You trade like kings, delicately exchanging the goods with a silent nod, like smugglers. Historians still argue whether peasants truly starved or merely subsisted. You, personally, are leaning toward hollow with a side of scurvy. A man starts telling a story to pass the time, something about a villager who baked a shoe into a pie to fake having meat. The punchline involves someone breaking a tooth and still thanking God for the flavor. You laugh because it's either that or cry. There's talk of a goose being spotted by the marsh last week. Someone tried to catch it. The goose won. Now there's a village song about it. You hum along, absent-mindedly twirling a twig like it's cutlery. You think back to last year's feast day, when a traveling monk passed through and gave out dried figs. You'd never tasted sweetness like that before. You dream about those figs sometimes. You'd trade 3 days' bread for one, maybe 4 if it had no worms. The bell rings again, breaks over. You don't feel rested. Your fingers are still sore, your legs still numb, and your brain still playing fig fantasies on a loop. But you rise anyway. Hunger never really leaves. It just steps into the background, hands folded politely, waiting for you to notice it again. As you dust off your tunic, a boy leans over and offers you a sniff of something from a small pouch. You inhale. It smells like herbs and vinegar. Smells like real soup, he says, almost like mutton. You nod, eyes wide. It's clearly just boiled weeds, but imagination's the best seasoning you've got. You glance at your hoe. It's lying there like it missed you. You pick it up, the wooden handle familiar as family. You sigh, stretch your aching arms, and head back into the field. Lunch is done. Not satisfying, not nourishing, but done. You're back in the field, heavier somehow, even though your stomach's still empty. The air feels thicker too, maybe from the sun, or the stew someone's cooking miles away that the wind is cruel enough to carry in your direction. Either way, it's back to work. But now, with food in your belly, your thoughts drift more easily, especially toward the man who owns this land, your labor, and technically, even your time, the Lord. You've seen him, of course, not up close. He's a distant figure in rich wool robes, draped in velvet when he feels fancy, always riding past like he invented horses. He lives in the manor, a gray stone structure with more fireplaces than your entire village has spoons. You don't speak to him. You speak to the steward, who speaks to the reeve, who speaks to the Lord's cousin, who maybe once passed him a note. The Lord owns nearly everything: the land, the grain, the forest, the stream, the fish in the stream, and yes, your goats if they wander too close. And you, really. You're a villain, a type of serf, so your family owes him labor every week. That's why you're here instead of tending your own small plot. It's called the corvée, a cheerful little term that means free labor for the rich man. Historians still argue whether villains were truly oppressed or just part of a symbiotic system. You argue that anyone who demands your only chicken because it crossed his road is not your friend. Rent is due in grain, chickens, eggs, or sometimes random chores like shoveling out the pig barn at night while being watched by a goose with issues. And when taxes come, they come in clumps. You pay to use the mill, to bake in the Lord's oven, and to sell anything in the market. Your cousin once joked about taxing the air. He now owes the Lord 3 sacks of flour. For unrelated reasons, of course. There's something called merchant too, a charming fee you pay the Lord when your daughter marries. You guess love needs a receipt. If your son wants to leave the village, that's chivage, a payment to buy freedom from the land. Spoiler, most people never leave. Quirky fact: one particularly creative lord in France once tried to claim the rights to his peasants' beeswax. Not the honey, just the wax. Apparently, he enjoyed candlelight, but not logic. Backbreaking labor and surprise fees are one thing, but then there's the random whims. One year, your village had to repair the manor's fish pond. No one even liked the fish. Another time, the Lord decided everyone should plant lavender for the aesthetic. Half the village sneezed for a month. You remember your uncle telling you how the Lord once borrowed his only ox. Said it was for plowing a noble cousin's estate. The ox returned weeks later, visibly thinner and mysteriously limping. It refused to look your uncle in the eye. He never asked where it went. And yet, it's not all fire and pitchforks. Sometimes the Lord throws a feast. Not for you, don't be silly, but for his friends. Still, leftover bones sometimes make it to the village. Last year, you got an actual marrow bone. You gnawed on it for 3 days, dreamed about it for longer. When the Black Death came through years ago, wiping out whole families, the Lord didn't abandon the manor. He just built a second wall around it. Smart, really. Cruel, but smart. You watched from a distance as his servants carried in wine barrels and salted meats. Meanwhile, your family chewed dried nettles and hoped the fever skipped you. There are stories, quiet ones, of lords who are kind, who forgive debts, who build schools. You haven't met one, but you believe in the idea the way people believe in saints. Hopeful, doubtful, and mostly because the alternative is despair. You spot the steward again, pacing like he's waiting to catch someone leaning. He shouts at a boy who dropped his rake. The boy is missing 2 fingers. You consider yelling back, but then think better of it. 1 finger is probably enough to hold a hoe. A distant bell rings, signaling afternoon prayers. You pause just long enough to mumble something halfway holy before diving back into work. Praying too long makes you look lazy. Lazy gets you fined. You glance up at the manor. Its windows gleam like smug little eyes. Sometimes you dream about being a bird, flying through those windows, knocking over the Lord's goblet and pooping on his cheese. It's a beautiful dream. Scholars say the feudal system was mutually beneficial. You suppose that's true if one party benefits and the other doesn't die too fast. You pass a patch of clover. You bend down to pick one, looking for luck. It's just a regular 3-leaf. You tuck it into your tunic anyway. Small rebellions, tiny comforts. Back to work. The soil doesn't care about your rent, your bruised hands, or your deeply rooted class resentment. It only cares that you keep digging. And dig you do. By the time the sun begins its slow descent behind the hills, your entire body feels like it's been run over by a cart full of rocks, and not even the good kind of rocks. You drag yourself back toward your village, steps clumsy and small, not because you're in a hurry, but because your legs have unionized and refuse to cooperate. The air is changing now. It smells like smoke and wet grass and whatever your neighbor is burning for dinner. You pass under the crooked wooden arch that marks the edge of your hamlet. 36 homes pressed together like sheep in a rainstorm. No straight lines, no cobblestone, just dirt paths that turn to sludge at the first sign of drizzle. Your home is exactly what you left it. A thatched roof hut made of mud, timber, and optimism. 1 room. Maybe 1.5 if you count the tiny alcove where you keep the goat and whatever dignity you haven't used up yet. It leans slightly to the left, which is fine, since so do you now. You push open the wooden door, really just planks lashed together with twine, and step inside. It's dim and smoky. Always smoky. Your family is gathered around the fire pit, which doesn't even pretend to vent properly. The thatch ceiling catches and holds every puff of soot like a wool blanket soaked in bacon grease. No chimney. That's a luxury. Smoke just lives here now. It dances lazily in the rafters, curls around your head, nestles in your tunic. You breathe it in. You cough. That's the tradition. The interior space is tight. To your left is the bed, more like a pile of lumpy straw under a sagging blanket that smells like it remembers every sickness ever had. To your right, a bench, a stool, and a bucket that does triple duty: washing, storage, and emergency toilet on icy nights. And dead ahead, the hearth, flickering low and trying not to give up. You sit beside it, groaning quietly, stretching your back and peeling off one foot wrap. Your toes are pale, pruned, and starting to blister. You wiggle them and try not to cry. Someone offers you a sip of ale. You nod gratefully and pass it back, careful not to spill a drop. That's dinner seasoning. The family goat bleats from the corner. It looks annoyed. You apologize. It doesn't forgive you. Your siblings are already sorting the evening's feast. Tonight's menu: boiled cabbage with a side of boiled cabbage. If you're lucky, there'll be some bits of oat or maybe a sprinkle of dried herbs. No one knows what the herbs are. They were picked near the latrine. You try not to think too hard about it. Quirky fact: many peasants didn't have tables. Meals were eaten squatting around the fire, bowls passed hand to hand, spoons shared like family heirlooms. You have a wooden spoon with a crack down the middle. You call it Splinter. It's yours, and you love it. The room is crowded, and not just with people. There are chickens roosting in the rafters, useful for eggs and surprisingly effective as feathered alarm clocks. A piglet snoozes near the door, and the family dog is snoring on your blanket, which you weren't done using. You shift to make space and immediately bump into your grandmother. She glares at you, then goes back to telling your cousin a story about the time she smuggled eggs under her skirt to avoid the Lord's taxes. You've heard it 12 times. You hope to hear it 12 more. Historians still argue whether medieval homes were this cramped for everyone. Some say poorer families lived communally by choice, others that they simply had no choice at all. You're squarely in the second camp. Choice implies options. You lean against the wall. It's damp. Not metaphorically, literally. The clay and wattle construction sweats during rainy seasons, and dry ones. Basically always. You reach up and poke a soft patch. It jiggles. You pretend that's normal. The fire pops. A spark lands dangerously close to someone's tunic. No one moves. It fizzles out on its own. Crisis averted. You notice a rat scurry across the floor and vanish into the dark. It looked well-fed. You consider that a bad sign. You hear your parents whispering about the next tithe payment. The church wants grain. Again. You have grain, barely, but it's full of weevils. You tried sifting them out once, but they kept coming back. You suspect they're unionized too. You lay down on the straw mat and feel every lump, rock, and former potato it's made from. You close your eyes and try not to think about fleas. It doesn't work. You scratch your arm and hope it's not another bite. It probably is. Scholars debate whether peasants truly saw their homes as shelter or just a pause from suffering. You figure it's a bit of both. It's where your stuff is, and your stuff is mostly broken. But it's warm, it's familiar, and you know where all the good sitting rocks are. Someone farts. Loudly. The chickens flutter. Your sister groans. The dog licks itself in protest. You smile, despite yourself. This is home. Later that evening, the fires burned low, casting shadows across the lumpy walls and flickering inside the eyes of the chicken perched on the crossbeam. You're still lying on the straw mat, staring up at the thatched roof, wondering which drip is going to fall on your face first. You lose the bet. Left eyebrow. Cold. You're trying not to think about the dull throb behind your temples. You've had it for days. Might be the smoke. Might be hunger. Might be whatever you caught from that cousin who hasn't stopped coughing since Candlemas. Either way, you're not well. And in this century, not well is a dangerous game. You roll over and mutter that your bones ache. Your mother frowns and presses her rough palm to your forehead. Then she nods grimly and reaches for the jar. You don't know exactly what's in it. Something between goose grease, crushed sage, and hope. She smears it on your chest like it's guaranteed to work. It isn't. This is the medieval approach to medicine. Improvise. The village healer has a book, but it's mostly drawings of plants, circles with eyes, and the occasional naked man being stung by bees. You're not sure it's helpful. Still, your mother chants a little prayer under her breath. Then she spits once, to confuse the evil spirits, and ties a scrap of cloth around your wrist soaked in vinegar and rosemary. Now you smell like a salad. A cursed one. Quirky fact, some believed frogs could pull out sickness. One method: tie the frog to the sick person's throat until the frog dies. That's the sign it worked. If the frog doesn't die, maybe you do. Your father suggests bleeding. Not because it helps, but because it's what's done. People say bad humors build up and must be let out. He grabs a knife. You politely decline. Historians still argue whether medieval medicine was completely ineffective or just deeply misunderstood. It's probably both. Sometimes it helps, often it doesn't. But people cling to rituals because doing something feels better than doing nothing. Your grandmother tells you to sleep it off. She says, rest, and if it's meant to pass, it will. If not, well, she trails off. That's comfort, 14th century style. The local healer, Agnes, isn't officially sanctioned by the church, but everyone sees her anyway. She knows things. Plants, poultices, charms. You remember last year when she gave your uncle a potion made from willow bark and mashed snails. He drank it, vomited dramatically, then got better. Possibly unrelated. Tonight, Agnes is busy helping a neighbor with a swollen foot. The neighbor stepped on a pitchfork 3 weeks ago and waited to see if it resolved naturally. It didn't. His foot now resembles an overripe plum. There's talk of amputation, with a woodcutter's axe. You try to sleep, but your head feels hot and your skin cold. The room spins slightly. You close your eyes, and a chicken lands beside your ear. You both agree to ignore each other. A knock rattles the wooden door. A messenger from the priest. Someone else is sick. He asks for candles and vinegar. Candles to pray, vinegar to wash the dying. Your mother hands him both without speaking. You whisper to yourself a little prayer you only half remember. Something about Saint Sebastian and sore throats. Or maybe that was Saint Apollonia. She might have been for teeth. You add both, just in case. The healer arrives hours later, smelling of garlic, damp herbs, and urgency. She checks your pulse by pressing your wrist and squinting like it owes her money. Then she sniffs your breath. Then she nods, which could mean anything from "you'll live" to "start saying goodbye." She mixes something in a wooden bowl, crushed yarrow, mint, ash from the hearth, and a pinch of salt. She tells you to drink it. You do. It tastes like someone boiled a sock. You hear someone mutter about leeches. You pretend to sleep. If you're asleep, they can't bleed you. Quirky detail, leeches weren't just for removing blood. Some healers believed placing them behind the ears could remove sinful thoughts. You briefly wonder what that feels like, then shudder and vow to stay virtuous. Outside, an owl hoots. You take that as a good sign, or a bad one. Interpretations vary. The rest of the family moves around you with soft steps. The baby is crying. Your brother is whispering a ghost story. The dog's tail thumps gently against your side. Someone adds more straw to your bed, which is sweet. You still feel terrible, but at least you feel loved. Your mother hums a song she used to sing when you were little. It has no words, just a lullaby made from long days and longer nights. It's the kind of tune that doesn't promise things will be okay, just that someone will sit beside you until they're not. You drift in and out of sleep, fever pulling your thoughts into strange corners. You dream of rain, of bread that's warm and soft, of a bed without lumps, of a world where people don't tie frogs to their necks to feel better. You wake once, shivering, and see your father stoking the fire. He gives you a look that says, "Still here." Good. You nod weakly. Morning will come, and either your fever will break, or you will. You roll onto your side, clutching your vinegar-soaked wrist charm, and listen to the fire whisper as it fades. You wake up sticky with sweat, your fever broken sometime in the night. Your hair is plastered to your forehead, and your tunic clings like wet paper. But you're awake, breathing, which means no frog funeral. A win. The fire is cold, the dog's missing, and someone's already sweeping ashes into a pot for tooth powder. You sit up slowly, joints creaking like barn hinges. Your mother hands you a crust of bread, breakfast, congratulations, and tells you to thank Saint Sebastian. You do, just in case. But there's no time to linger. It's Sunday, which means church. You pull on your least terrible tunic, only 2 patches, both almost matching, and wrap your feet in the good cloths, meaning the ones with fewer holes. You toss a bit of water on your face from the wash bowl. It's gray and smells faintly of turnip. That's holy freshness, medieval style. The church is in the center of the village, rising like a holy barn covered in moss. It's one of the few stone buildings around, sturdy, cold, and vaguely threatening. The bell tolls once, and everyone begins their slow shuffle toward it. No one walks fast. Fast looks eager. Eager looks suspicious. Religion isn't optional. Attendance is expected, and absence earns attention. The kind of attention that leads to talks with the priest, or worse, whispers from neighbors. One woman missed Mass for 2 weeks and woke up to her door smeared with pig's blood. No one admitted to it. Everyone agreed she deserved it. Inside, the church smells like candles, wet cloaks, and a century of incense. The air is thick. The pews are hard. The priest is already chanting in Latin, which you don't understand, but you mouth along anyway. It's safer that way. Historians still argue whether peasants understood the Mass or simply endured it. You fall in the endured camp, but sometimes the rhythm of the service feels familiar, comforting even, like a song you don't know the lyrics to but still hum. The priest speaks of sin, humility, obedience. He never mentions hunger, or cold, or the man who died last week from a fever, because no one could afford more than a boiled root. But he says, the poor are blessed. So you hold on to that. Then comes the collection. Tithes. You're supposed to give 1/10 of what you earn, which is tricky since you earn precisely nothing. So your family contributes eggs, sometimes herbs, occasionally a chicken. Not the best one, the grumpy one. The church owns land, mills, and even the right to collect rents. You work all week for the Lord, but on Sunday, you pay the church for the honor of hearing that suffering is holy. It's a full circle kind of misery. You sneak a glance at the stained glass. It's cracked and smeared with soot, but the sunlight peeks through, casting splashes of color on the stone. For a moment, you pretend you're in a place of magic, of peace. Then the priest starts yelling about temptation, and the illusion pops like a flea. Quirky fact: peasants were sometimes forbidden from reading religious texts. Not that you can read, but still. The priest says it's better this way. Less confusion. You nod as if you agree. You wouldn't know if you didn't. The sermon wraps with a warning about dancing. Again. There was a wedding last week, and apparently things got spirited. Rumor has it someone spun in a circle. The scandal. After Mass, there's confession. You wait in a loose line, eyes down, shuffling forward. When it's your turn, you kneel on creaky wood and whisper through a screen. You admit you thought impure thoughts about a traveling tinker, that you cursed the pig when it bit you, that you secretly hope the steward steps on a rake. The priest grunts. He tells you to say 5 paternosters and warns you about cabbage envy. You didn't mention cabbage. Interesting. You leave feeling not cleansed exactly, just catalogued. Outside, the villagers mill about. Someone's trading eggs for nails. Someone else is trying to sell a pouch of herbs they swear will make your goats more obedient. You suspect it's just dried grass and wishful thinking. You sit on a nearby stump, watching kids chase each other with sticks shaped like swords. One of them pretends to be the Pope. The others boo. He seems delighted. Religion touches everything. Births, marriages, deaths. There are saints for travelers, thieves, and even plagues. You once prayed to 4 different saints because no one could remember which one covered boils. Your friend Thomas tells you he tried to carve a little cross to wear around his neck. It splintered, and his mother cried for an hour. She thought it was an omen, or termites. You remember the last funeral, old Merrick, who fell into the mill pond. No one knows if it was an accident. The priest said it was God's will. Everyone nodded. Then they went back to digging trenches. Scholars debate whether medieval religion brought people peace or simply fear. You think maybe both. It's the only story you're told over and over. Behave, suffer well, and your reward comes after. You walk back home slowly, the mud sucking at your feet, the wind nipping at your tunic. You whisper another prayer, just to be safe. Saint Apollonia, Saint Sebastian, Saint whoever's on duty. You're still poor, still tired, still unsure if cabbage envy is a real sin. But for now, you've done your part. You make it back to the village just as a faint drumbeat carries over the hill. A distant, rhythmic thump that can only mean one thing. The fair has arrived. You feel it in your chest before you even see it. The excitement, the possibility, the slight panic that you'll miss the best part, which, let's be honest, is probably a juggler falling down. You grab your patched cloak, yes, the one with the hole shaped suspiciously like a rat bite, and hurry toward the noise, heart thumping in time with the drum. The fair happens once a year, sometimes twice if the weather's good and the Lord's feeling generous. It's the closest thing to magic you'll ever touch. Bright stalls, strange smells, loud voices, traders from other villages, merchants with colorful cloaks, performers with too much confidence and too few teeth. As you reach the field where the fair's been set up, your mouth falls open. Flags flap overhead, stalls brim with unfamiliar items, and smells hit you from every angle. Roasting meat, spiced wine, honey cakes, and something that might be cheese or might be regret. You shuffle through the crowd, feet dragging, eyes wide. A man with painted cheeks calls out, juggling knives and cackling as he nearly slices his own hat. Children shriek with delight. Adults edge back, remembering last year's incident. You clutch your small pouch of coins. It contains exactly 1/2 penny and 2 buttons you're hoping pass as currency. You make a beeline for the food stalls. A woman is selling something golden and sticky. Honey. Real honey. You stare at it like it's a holy relic. She offers a sample on the tip of a spoon. You taste it. It's like sunlight and sin. You almost cry. You can't afford a full cake, but you hover near enough to absorb the aroma through osmosis. Then you buy a boiled turnip skewer from a kind-looking man with a stained apron. It tastes like every other turnip you've ever eaten, but now it's fair food, so you pretend it's divine. Historians still argue whether medieval fairs actually provided economic relief for peasants or just a brief, expensive distraction. You lean toward expensive distraction, especially as you hand over your last button for a strip of questionable dried meat. It's tough, salty, and possibly made from squirrel. You chew like it's your last meal. You wander past stalls of cloth, bright reds and blues you've never seen on anyone in your village. Dyes are expensive, reserved for the wealthy or the traveling swindler. You touch a piece of crimson linen, and someone slaps your hand away. Worth it. You hear music next, a piper and a man with a hurdy-gurdy playing something wild and wobbly. People dance in circles. Someone yells, "No spinning!" in jest, referencing the priest's latest sermon. Everyone spins harder. Quirky fact, medieval fairs sometimes featured dancing bears, animals trained to sway on hind legs while a man banged a drum. One such bear is here now, eyes dull, fur patchy, looking about as thrilled as you are to be here. Children cheer. The bear stares into the void. You nod at it in solidarity. Near the edge of the clearing, you spot the puppet man. His stage is a creaky box with frayed curtains, and the puppets are carved from wood and a sense of sarcasm. The show is chaotic. A noble gets slapped with a fish, the devil trips over a bucket, and the peasant puppet steals bread and escapes on a pig. It's the most relatable art you've ever seen. You laugh so hard you hiccup. A boy next to you does a cartwheel into a barrel. Applause all around. Not far off, a man with a monkey and a painted tambourine shouts predictions for a penny. "You'll meet a beautiful widow," he tells a 5-year-old. The boy beams. The monkey steals his bread. You pass a tent selling charms, dried herbs, wooden amulets, tiny bags of blessing dust. One promises protection from boils. Another claims to improve pig fertility. You consider one shaped like a turnip. Maybe it's good luck. Maybe it's just a carved root. You buy it anyway. Scholars debate whether these fairs were more religious or economic, given they often coincided with saints' days. You don't care. It's a reason to not work. That makes it holy enough. You pause at the gallows, a permanent fixture used for reminders. Today, they're just draped in garlands. Decorative menace. There's a story going around that a thief got caught last night with his hands in someone's honey jar. Not a metaphor. Real honey. They say he's in the stocks now, covered in bees. You make a mental note to visit later. By late afternoon, your feet are sore, your belly is fuller than usual, and your pouch is empty. A fair day, all told. You sit by a tree near the edge of the fairground, chewing the last of your maybe squirrel, and watching the sun dip behind the treetops. You hear a merchant hawking miracle gloves made from sheep's wool and the patience of angels. A child throws up nearby after too much turnip wine. A juggler catches 3 apples and drops a 4th on someone's head. The bear sits down heavily and scratches itself. Everyone claps. It's all loud, chaotic, dusty, and wonderful. For a few short hours, you weren't just a peasant. You were a customer, an audience, a dreamer. You stand up, stretch your back, and toss your new turnip amulet in the air. You catch it. Maybe it is lucky. Or maybe not. A pickpocket slips past, brushing your tunic. Joke's on him. You're broke. You make it back home just as twilight slips into night, your head buzzing with the fair's smells and sounds. The fire's already crackling inside your smoky little hut. Your siblings sprawled around it like they're auditioning for a fresco called Exhaustion in Wool. You collapse onto the straw, and that's when the smell hits you. Not the fire, not the goat, not even the leftover turnip stew. It's you. You raise your arm and wince. It's a scent that can best be described as earthy panic, a blend of sweat, wool, foot wraps, onion, and despair. Bathing, sadly, isn't in the cards tonight, or tomorrow, or probably the rest of the week. That's just life. Bathing isn't forbidden. It's just impractical. The river's freezing most of the year. The public bathhouse is 3 villages away, and the last time you tried to warm water over the fire, your brother used it to clean a turnip. So you wash in bits, a cloth dabbed with cold water, a sprinkle of vinegar. Some say a rinse in stale beer works too. Mostly, you settle for rubbing herbs under your arms and hoping your enemies pass out before you do. Quirky fact: sage, lavender, rosemary, and mint were all used as primitive deodorants, either worn in pouches around the neck or crushed and stuffed under the arms. You currently smell like damp time and desperation. You dig into a small sack for your toiletry kit, a stick for scraping teeth, a shard of cloth for wiping your face, and a flea comb with more former residents than you'd like to admit. Dental hygiene, medieval style, means scraping your teeth with twigs and chewing herbs. Your breath now smells like bitter parsley. You feel accomplished. Historians still argue whether personal hygiene standards were universally poor or simply different. Truth is, you'd love to be clean. You just don't have the soap, time, or hot water. Besides, if everyone stinks, no one stinks, right? You pick at a scab on your shin and squint at your toenails. One of them looks haunted. The others are doing their best. Your brother removes his shirt to dry near the fire. Bad move. The room fills with the aroma of scorched armpit. The chickens flutter above in protest. You all groan. He shrugs. The village has a bath day, technically, usually during feast times when folks cleanse to honor a saint. But even then, it's communal, cold, and full of arguments about who gets the good side of the tub. Last time, a goat got in before you did. It had no regrets. You recall a traveling merchant once bragging about soap from Castile. Pure, white, and scented. He looked clean enough to eat. You wanted to ask what it felt like to touch your own skin without recoiling. Instead, you rubbed crushed rosemary into your neck and pretended you were royalty. You do have one luxury: a single square of rough linen you boil, dry, and use for special occasions. You dream of using it tomorrow. Then remember, tomorrow is digging ditches and crying. Maybe next week. You scratch your neck and pull something off your collar. Lice, probably. You pinch it between 2 fingers and toss it into the fire like a tiny demon. It pops. You nod with satisfaction. 1 down, 10,000 to go. The firelight softens the room. You catch glimpses of the others. Your mother brushing out her hair with a forked stick. Your sister washing her feet in the corner with a bucket of gray water and crushed mint. She hums. You think it helps? Someone farts. It's unclear who. Blame is passed around like bread. In the end, you all laugh. There's a rhythm to this filth, a communal shrug. Everyone smells, everyone itches, everyone dreams of a bath that doesn't end with pneumonia or disappointment. You've heard rumors of nobles bathing weekly. Some say even daily. You don't know if it's true, but if it is, they must float when they walk. Back in your world, washing too often is suspicious. Are you trying to impress someone? Are you hiding something? Are you a heretic? One man bathed twice in a week and someone accused him of being French. He wasn't. He just had a rash. You lie back against the straw, inhaling the combined aroma of goats, garlic, and the mysterious thing fermenting in the corner. Your skin itches, your scalp tingles, your armpits whisper insults. But you're tired. So tired. You scratch once more, roll to your side, and close your eyes. Cleanliness may be next to godliness, but tonight, you're aiming for sleep. Morning returns too soon, gray light slipping between the thatch, smoke still hanging in the air like yesterday's arguments. You sit up, scratch at your shoulder, and stretch your neck until it cracks like dry bread. Your back answers with a noise that sounds like a warning. Today's a domestic day, which is just a fancy way of saying there's no field work, only everything else. And at the top of the list, marriage. Not yours, yet, but someone's. You hear the neighbors talking about it already. 2 villages over, a girl of 15 is being married to a boy of 16, which is old by your standards. Your cousin was promised at 12. The girl cried, but the family got a goose out of it, so. Worth it? You're of age yourself. Not that you had a say in when that happened. You hit 4 feet tall and stopped chasing chickens. Congratulations, you're marriageable. You try to look busy and avoid eye contact with your mother, who's been dropping subtle hints like, we really need another back for the field. And that family down the lane has 2 unmarried daughters and a surprisingly sturdy cow. Historians still argue whether peasant marriages were based on mutual affection or strictly economic alliances. You suspect the answer is both, if you're lucky. Neither, if you're not. Marriage isn't about romance. It's about survival. You get someone to split the chores, bear children, and hopefully not steal your turnip stash. That's love, medieval edition. Your parents were married at the church altar, surrounded by family, livestock, and at least 3 guests with dysentery. There was dancing, briefly, drinking, heavily, and a fight over a cabbage. You've seen the cabbage. It wasn't worth it. You watch as a neighbor girl carries water from the well with practiced ease. She's 12, already betrothed. Her future husband's name is Thomas. He has 2 teeth and a limp. She has no choice. At least he's not mean. Or so they say. Your own prospects? Slim. You own half a chicken and a belt made of rope. But you're strong. You can lift a hay bale without crying. That counts for something, right? Once married, the real fun begins. Children follow, fast and often. Not because you're especially fertile, but because you don't know how not to have children. The church frowns on anything that might prevent it. You've heard whispered tales about herbs that can stop a baby from catching, but talking about them aloud could get you flogged. Or worse, excommunicated. Your older sister has 3 children already. She's 20. One has a cough that won't quit. Another keeps swallowing rocks. and the baby mostly screams like it's warning of an incoming storm. She looks 20 going on 50. You love her. You're terrified of becoming her. Quirky fact, babies were often swaddled so tightly they resembled little turnips with eyes. The logic was that it kept their limbs straight. Some were left hanging from beams so they'd be out of the way. You once mistook your cousin for a sack of onions. Childbirth is a gamble. No doctors, no sterile tools, just midwives, hot water, and prayers to saints with names you suddenly remember under duress. Saint Margaret is popular. She's supposed to help with difficult births. You'd pray to her now, just in case. Your neighbor's wife died last year giving birth to twins. The twins died too. The priest said it was God's will. The village said it was because she walked on uneven ground the day before. You say nothing. What's there to say? You wander to the common green and see a group of women shelling peas, gossiping softly. One of them gestures to a red-faced baby in a basket. "Seventh one," she says proudly. "Only lost 2. Everyone nods like that's a triumph. It is a triumph. You hear someone shout from a hut nearby. A child, probably. The scream is followed by a thud and a chicken flapping out the door. Normal. You return home and help with the laundry, boiling tunics in a pot over the fire, beating them with a stick until the lice get dizzy. You pass the time talking with your younger sister, who asks if getting married hurts. You pause, then lie and say no. She nods, and you both pretend the world is kinder than it is. You think of all the little bodies buried at the edge of the churchyard, unmarked mostly. So many didn't make it past 5. You remember your brother who died in spring. He had dimples and sticky fingers. One day he coughed. The next, he didn't wake up. Scholars still debate whether peasant families truly expected loss or simply coped with it when it came. You don't know. You just know the lullabies always sound a little sad. Evenings are the quietest. After the stew has been eaten, after the babies have cried themselves to sleep, after the fire has softened to coals, you sit and watch your mother mend a tunic by lamplight. She hums. The thread trembles in her fingers. Her hands are scarred but steady. You know one day she'll be gone. Then it'll be your hands mending things in the dark. You look at your siblings sleeping in a pile, heads nestled against goats, straw, and each other. They smell like smoke and onions. You love them so fiercely it hurts. You sigh, lie back on the straw, and press your hand over your belly. It's flat now, empty. But maybe one day it won't be. And maybe, just maybe, that child will live long enough to dance at a fair and laugh at a puppet show and wear clean linen for no reason. Maybe. You're woken early by shouting outside, a chorus of gasps, groans, and one excited cackle. You stagger to the door, rubbing sleep from your eyes, and there it is. The stocks have been dragged out again. Justice, medieval style, has come to town. This time it's a neighbor's son, Tom, a lanky boy with a fondness for skipping chores and sneaking extra crusts. He's locked in the wooden frame, arms and head trapped, nose sunburned, and a chicken pecking suspiciously close to his ear. His crime? Stealing a handful of dried peas from the steward's cart. A grave offense, obviously. You lean against the hut's door frame, chewing a bit of straw, and watch the spectacle unfold. Villagers wander over, not out of cruelty exactly, but curiosity. Entertainment is rare, and the public shaming of a 15-year-old over legumes qualifies. Someone throws a cabbage leaf. It bounces harmlessly off Tom's head. He winces anyway. Another kid throws a joke. Hope it was worth the peas, pea-brain. Everyone laughs. Even Tom, kind of. This is how justice works here. Minor crimes earn humiliation. Bigger ones earn time in the pillory, or worse. You've seen a woman dunked in the pond for gossiping 3 times in winter. She came out with blue lips and silent eyes. The village was quiet for a week. Quirky fact. Animals could be tried in court. You once watched a pig stand trial for knocking over a bucket of milk. The priest made the sign of the cross, the steward gave a speech, and the pig was sentenced to death by bread strangulation. You didn't understand it then. You still don't. Historians still argue whether medieval justice served more as law or spectacle. You're leaning toward spectacle, especially when the juggler from last week's fair volunteered to MC a hanging. He was denied, but only just. You recall the thief who tried to rob the church donation box. He was caught, flogged, and had his ear nailed to the stocks. To leave, he had to rip himself free. He limped for months. Now he tends goats and talks to fence posts. The goats seem to enjoy it. You shift your weight, eyeing the stocks warily. You've never been in them, yet. But you've come close. That time you swore at the reeve under your breath? He almost heard. That time you refused to kneel during the procession? Claimed it was a bad knee. It wasn't. Sometimes guilt is less important than timing. You've heard of trials by ordeal. If accused of theft, you might be made to carry a red-hot iron bar. If your hand heals cleanly, you're innocent. If it festers, well, you probably deserved it. You once knew a boy who survived one of those trials. The burns never healed, but he never stole again, mostly because he couldn't hold anything. You wander past the old gallows, now overgrown with moss. It's not used often, thank the saints, but everyone remembers when it was. The executioner was a drunk and missed the first swing. The crowd screamed. The priest fainted. No one clapped. At the market, 2 women argue over a basket of rotting apples. A man steps between them and declares, "Let's be civil." Then he steals one and runs. The women resume arguing about who dropped it first. The reeve watches from a distance and yawns. Justice here isn't written in books. It's written in mud, bruises, and whispered warnings. Don't anger the steward. Don't insult the priest. Don't outsmart the Lord. Keep your head down and your peas hidden. You remember your uncle's friend accused of poaching a deer. No one ever proved it. But he was found with blood on his boots and a smile. He vanished the next day. Rumor says he joined a band of outlaws in the forest. More likely, he's in it permanently. Scholars debate whether community-based punishment kept the peace or just shifted the fear. You think both. Fear keeps order, but it also keeps secrets. You turn back to Tom. He's nodding off, arms trembling, but still upright. Someone hands him a crust. He chews slowly, defiantly. His mother stands nearby, eyes wet but proud. She mouths something to him. You'll be out soon. Evening comes. The stocks creak. A few boys run past, giggling, and smear some mud on Tom's foot. He doesn't react. The priest finally nods, and the steward releases him. His arms drop like sacks. He stumbles to his feet, looks around, and says, "Those peas weren't even good." Everyone laughs. Justice is satisfied. For now. You walk home under a fading sky. Footsteps soft, thoughts louder. You wonder what you'd be willing to risk for a scrap of meat, a warm cloak, a moment of dignity. You don't know yet, but you think someday you'll find out. You reach your hut, close the door behind you, and listen to the wind whistle outside. No punishment today. No punishment yet. It's morning again, but it doesn't feel like a normal day. The light outside is golden. The air is thick with the smell of baking. Well, boiling. And for once, no one is shouting about a pig in the turnip patch or a collapsed roof. The reason? It's a holy day. You stretch your aching limbs and sit up slowly. Today is the feast of Saint Cuthbert, or maybe it's Saint Bartholomew. You're not entirely sure. The church calendar is packed tighter than your old straw mattress. What matters is that it's a feast day, which means no field work, fewer punishments, and the possibility, just the possibility, of a mildly better meal. Holy days are your only breaks from toil. Dozens dot the year, sometimes 2 or 3 in a single month, depending on which saint needs celebrating. You're told it's a rest for the soul. What it really means is standing for hours in church, then fasting, then eating cabbage with slightly more fanfare than usual. Historians still argue whether feast days provided genuine rest or simply reshuffled the chores. You'd say both. Your hands get a break from the hoe, but your knees will spend hours kneeling on cold stone. You pull on your cleanest tunic, which isn't saying much, and wrap your footcloths tight. They're still damp from yesterday's laundry attempt, but at least they smell less like goat. Your mother is already muttering about boiling leeks and stretching a carrot to feed 7 if we pretend it's blessed. Outside, the village hums with holy anticipation. Banners hang crookedly from door frames. A cow has been brushed. Children are pretending not to be covered in dirt. You spot the steward adjusting his belt for the 4th time. He always eats too much on feast days and plans ahead. The church bells ring. Everyone flocks to Mass, a slow-moving procession of itchy wool and reverent sighs. Inside, it's candlelit and somber. The priest chants in Latin, his voice rising and falling like waves. You understand about 5 words, but you nod along with gravity, like they mean something personal. There's incense, prayers, a lecture about sin, and a very long reading that includes the phrase wailing and gnashing of teeth 3 times. You think that's a bit much. You glance at your friend beside you who's nodding off. The priest locks eyes with him. The lecture gets louder. After the service, you shuffle into the churchyard, blinking in the daylight. The fast begins now. No meat, no eggs, no dairy. Unless, of course, someone forgets, or is nobility, or knows a priest who says eels don't count as meat. Apparently, eels are fish-shaped blessings. Quirky fact, during Lent and feast day fasts, some monasteries declared beaver tails and puffins to be aquatic and thus acceptable. You once heard someone call snails land oysters and take communion right after eating 5. You spend the afternoon helping prepare the meal, which mostly means peeling onions and stepping around the dog, who has decided that the cooking pit is his throne today. Your sister hums a tune about St. Mary. It's not particularly catchy, but you hum along. The rhythm of work is oddly soothing when it's not backbreaking. The stew is mostly greens and barley with a suspiciously small piece of salted pork, just for flavor. Your grandmother calls it a miracle. You call it barely visible. Still, it smells wonderful, and everyone crowds around with wooden bowls and bright eyes. The meal is shared in the open air near the central well. People eat slowly, savoring each bite. Children giggle. Old men grumble cheerfully. Even the chickens seem less obnoxious. Someone breaks out a flute and plays a tune that sounds vaguely like joy. You remember past feast days, one where someone juggled apples, another when a dancing dog stole a shoe and was named village mayor for the afternoon. You laughed until your sides ached. That night you went to bed, hungry, but happy. You sip from a mug of watered-down ale and lean back against a stump. The sun feels warm on your face. For a moment, the world is soft. You don't think about rent, about hunger, about the mold creeping up the back wall of your home. You just breathe. A boy nearby tries to impress a girl by balancing a spoon on his nose. It falls into his stew. She claps anyway. That might be love. Your cousin leads a clumsy dance. People join in. They're spinning. The priest looks concerned. Someone pretends to trip and falls dramatically into a pile of hay. The crowd erupts with laughter. For this one day, no one's hoeing, crying, or swearing at a goat. It's like the village collectively remembered that humans can smile. Evening creeps in, and the fire pits glow brighter. Stories are shared, some true, some suspiciously magical. One man swears he saw a saint disguised as a tinker, handing out onions. Another woman claims her wart vanished after singing a hymn to Saint Agatha. You nod thoughtfully, hiding your wart-free but deeply skeptical fingers. Scholars debate whether feast days created unity or merely distraction. You think maybe they did both. Today, you feel connected, not just to the people beside you, but to something bigger. A rhythm of life that says, you're suffering, yes, but look, there's cabbage and music too. As the stars appear, you make your way home, belly warm, feet sore, heart quiet. Tomorrow will bring the fields, the aches, the debt, the routine. But tonight is soft bread, laughter, and the smell of leeks. You curl up on your straw mat, blanket pulled to your chin, eyes fluttering closed. For once, you sleep before the goat does. You wake to silence. Not the tense, something's wrong kind of silence, but the gentle hush that comes after too much food and just enough laughter. The fire's cold, your limbs are stiff, but there's still a faint warmth in your chest, a kind of soft echo of yesterday's feast day joy. It doesn't last long. Outside, a bell tolls. Slowly, solemnly. You know that sound. You rise, throw on your tunic, and follow the slow procession of villagers toward the churchyard. Another burial. Word spreads quick in small villages. It's old Hilda. Fell in the night, they say, quietly. At least, that's what everyone repeats to each other, like a charm meant to soften grief. You stand by the edge of the shallow grave, clutching your elbows, and watch as the priest sprinkles dirt onto the simple wooden box. The earth here is rocky, so graves aren't deep. Sometimes, after a heavy rain, the ground shifts and things come back up. That's just life, and death, and everything in between. There's no headstone, just a small cross made of sticks. Hilda was poor, like everyone else, but she used to make honey cakes during feast days. You once traded her a dried beet for a single bite. You still remember the taste. You whisper a quiet thanks as the last clump of dirt lands on the lid. Death here is not an event. It's a presence, a neighbor, a cousin, a regular at every table. You know people by the way they die: fever, famine, childbirth, accident, old age if they're lucky. You suspect luck isn't distributed evenly. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants feared death or simply accepted it. You've grown up with it. You've carried friends to their graves and held your breath during winters when the cough came knocking door to door. You walk back home slowly, feet dragging, eyes low. The wind tugs at your sleeves. A crow lands on the well's wooden cover and stares at you like it knows something. You nod at it, just in case. When you get back, the chores are already waiting. The goat has escaped. Again. Your sister is in pursuit. waving a stick and shouting unholy things. Your mother sighs and begins repairing the cracked pot for stew. You grab a shovel and start clearing the drainage ditch behind the house. It smells worse than usual today. Your back protests, but you push through. Not because you're strong, but because no one else will do it if you stop. As you dig, your thoughts drift, again, to endings. One day, it'll be you in that shallow grave, wrapped in your second-best tunic, buried between the smith's daughter and a sheep that once headbutted you into a puddle. No gold, no stone, just a cross if someone remembers. You wonder if your name will survive. Maybe not. But maybe someone will remember the way you sang off-key at the fair, or the time you fed half your bread to a boy who lost his father in the harvest. Maybe that's enough. You pause, lean on the shovel, and look at the hills. The trees are turning. Another season slipping through calloused hands. Your hands. You stretch your fingers and feel the years in your joints. Quirky fact. Some villagers believed planting flowers on graves helped guide souls to the next life. Others thought the scent tricked wandering spirits into staying buried. You don't believe either, but you still planted thyme near your brother's cross. It grows well. The sun begins to dip. The wind picks up. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks, then falls silent. You finish the ditch, wipe your brow, and return home. The hut is quiet again. The fire's back, warming the room with soft crackles. Your sister's asleep, curled under a blanket of patched wool and dried grass. The goat has returned, smug and chewing your only good sock. You sit beside the fire and sip a bowl of thin stew. It tastes like onion and resilience. You think, life is short. Life is hard. Life is yours. You settle onto your straw mat, feel every lump, every ache, every memory stitched into the cloth, and close your eyes. This is what it's like to be poor in medieval times. You love, you lose, you labor, you laugh, and somehow you survive. So now, as the fire burns low and your breath slows with it, let your mind drift gently through the quiet corners of this ancient world. The weight of the soil fades from your shoulders. The blisters cool. The ache in your back dissolves into straw and shadow. Your hands, once raw from the hoe, now rest softly in your lap as the night hums with distant owls and the hush of sleeping fields. Somewhere, a faint bell tolls, not for loss, but for the passing of another day. A day survived, a story told. And if you listen closely, beyond the creak of rafters and the rustle of hens, you might just hear the whisper of the wind through the trees, the same wind that carried laughter from the fair, the scent of warm bread, the prayers of aching knees on cold stone. Let it carry you now. Let the flickering light of your village hearth fade to the warm quiet of sleep. The turnips, the lice, the dancing bear, the gossip in the pillory, they're all still there, tucked safely into the folds of memory. But for tonight, they can rest, and so can you. You've tilled the field, suffered the blisters, chased the goat, and tasted that one perfect drop of honey. Sleep now, traveler. Sleep as the peasants slept, tired, tangled in family, and dreaming of warmth. Dream softly, dream long, and dream free.